first evidence that came from this study in 2001. And the way these studies work is they enroll a group of elderly people, and then they follow them over time. They see if they develop or not the condition. So this was a group of people that they enrolled, and they followed over time, and they saw that people that had high physical activity had half the risk of developing Alzheimer's over time. Okay, here at the very top are people that did not do any exercise, and the people that did high exercise actually develop Alzheimer's with half the risk. And the question would be, how does this work? So the way exercise works is that it's very good for your heart. Okay, there's a rule of thumb, and one idea that I would like you to all come out from this talk is that whatever is good for your heart is good for your brain. That's a very important take-home message. Okay, anything that helps your heart is helping your brain. Your heart will pump more oxygen and blood to the brain, and this is actually beneficial. So if you exercise, you will develop more fitness, and you will be good for your cardiovascular system. This will help the brain. There's another thing that exercise does, which is that it promotes brain plasticity, and I will discuss that in detail. So one of the areas of the brain that improves with exercise is the hippocampus, and I will show you why. Okay, so as we mentioned before, this is a brain, so you guys should already know all the some of the different parts of the brain. Here on red is the hippocampus. So the hippocampus is the part of the brain that is affected early in Alzheimer's, and it is very important for memory. Okay, the hippocampus, I like to see it as the place where memories are stored for short term. So let's say you are listening to this talk right now and you're reading all these slides. This information is going to be stored in the hippocampus for a short time. And then once you have processed this information will be transferred to the rest of the brain. But this is kind of like the first stop where your memories stay. And within the hippocampus, there's this part in green, which is called the dentate gyrus. And this part actually has neurons that grow. So for many years, we thought that we were born with the same number of neurons at birth, and the number of neurons will never change. That is a wrong assumption. We now know that there are new neurons produced in the brain. There is what we call in medicine neurogenesis, and these neurons are actually created here in the dentate gyrus. And when we exercise, we are creating new neurons. Okay, so one of the reasons why exercise is good is that we are helping our brain create new neurons in the hippocampus, which is good for memory. And we're showing here a study. So just follow me. We have three regions of the brain. We have the hippocampus here on the top. We have the caudate nucleus, and we have the thalamus. Okay. What they did in this study is they asked people to do aerobic exercise, okay, at baseline, and then 6 months and 1 year later. And they checked these three areas of the brain, and they did a very simple experiment. They said, we're going to ask this group of healthy people to do exercise for a year, and we're going to see what happens with these areas of the brain. And what they saw, I'm going to go to the very top. This is the volume. We can see in red the people that did not exercise, and we can see in blue the people that exercise. And what we're seeing is that actually the people that exercise had an increase in volume. So actually your hippocampus is becoming bigger. It went from 4.9 liters to almost 5, and this is a big increase. Okay, they did not see this increase in volume in other areas like the caudate nucleus and the thalamus. So this was one of the first studies that showed evidence that exercise is actually increasing the volume of the area of the brain that is more important for memory. Okay? How does it work? So we don't understand very well how, but we believe that when we exercise, we release some proteins by the muscle that go to the brain, and they increase the production of a neurotrophin called BDNF. Okay, so BDNF is a molecule that is very beneficial for neurons. It promotes their survival, it increases their plasticity, and it improves memory. So what we think is happening is that the muscles release molecules that cross the brain-blood barrier, and this promotes the release of BDNF, double cortin, and other molecules, which have the outcome of producing hippocampal neurogenesis. So this is how it works. Okay, so it's not just that exercise is good for your heart, which is true. It is also that there are direct effects of exercise on the brain, and it's actually helping our hippocampus grow. Okay. There's also the release of many other molecules. If you go into the internet, you will see that exercise has been associated with the release of serotonin, of dopamine, of endorphins. Those pathways are not very well understood, but the general idea is if you exercise, you will release endorphins. Endorphins are good for your pain. You will feel less pain. If the brain releases serotonin, you will feel that your mood is a little bit better. And when you release dopamine or noradrenaline, you will be more focused and you will be more alert. So the general idea is that exercise also helps the brain release molecules that will help you with feeling more awake and feeling in better spirits and feeling with less pain. So that's the third bullet point that I wanted to share. Okay. All right. So after exercise, what's the other thing that we need to know about? We need to know about sleep. Okay. So how does sleep work? All right. So this is a tough one too. So sleep changes as we grow older. Older people tend to go to sleep earlier. They become more early birds. Also, sleep tends to become more fragmented. So it's very common that people will say, I used to sleep through the night. Now I wake up 2-3 times to go to the bathroom. Okay. There is a decrease in slow wave sleep. Slow wave sleep is the stage of sleep that helps us be in a more depth sleep. It's also called deep sleep. And we also see that there are some conditions like sleep apnea and insomnia that increase as we grow older. Okay, so this is what we call a hypnogram. Okay, so sleep is very complex. We have REM and non-REM. And what we're seeing here is the transitions from a person that goes from being awake to non-REM stage 1 and 2, and then into deep sleep. This area here is deep sleep. And then you have different REM episodes. We do not know why sleep has this, what we call architecture or structure. Okay. What happens when we become older? That this is another hypnogram of a young adult at the very top. And we see that it has very nice cycles. And we are seeing these cycles every 90 minutes. And when we grow older, we lose the natural cycles of sleep. It becomes much more fragmented and noisy. Okay? And what this causes is that we lose a little bit of slow wave sleep, and we lose also REM sleep. So some of the deepest stages of sleep, especially slow wave sleep and REM sleep, are lost as we grow older. Why is this important? Because as I mentioned before, if you all remember, the hippocampus is the area of the brain that helps store our short-term memories. The time of the day in which our memories go from short-term to long-term storage is during sleep. Okay, so what sleep does is that it sends all these memories from temporary storage to long-term storage. So the rest of the brain is what keeps memories lasting for longer. This communication between the hippocampus and the rest of the brain happens during sleep. Okay, and this communication that between the hippocampus and the cortex that happens during sleep happens for the most part during slow wave sleep, which is the stage of sleep that we lose as we get older. So our brain loses the capacity to store memories during sleep as we grow older. This is something that it occurs with aging. Okay. The other important thing about sleep is that it's very important to regulate our emotions. So one of the things that happens, this area here on yellow is the amygdala, and this is usually what tells our memories if these are good memories or bad memories. And I'm going to show you a very funny study. So in this study, they asked people to record themselves while they were singing karaoke, but they couldn't listen to themselves. So they were singing very badly, and then they asked them to watch a video of themselves singing karaoke, and it's very embarrassing, as you can imagine. Okay, so what they did is they tested this very embarrassing experiment, which is watching yourself singing very badly in karaoke, and they did an MRI, and they had a group of people that had not slept and a group of people that had slept well. And what they saw is that the activation of the amygdala, which is like a brain way of seeing if you are feeling embarrassment, was much lower in the people that slept well. So in other words, sleeping not only helps us with our memory, it also helps us with the regulation of our emotions. So if we feel embarrassed, or if we feel ashamed or bad or depressed, this is something that sleep is going to help us reduce, and we will remember that we sang karaoke, but we will not feel bad about it any longer. So it's helping us regulate our emotions. This is driven by REM, and REM is also another stage of sleep that is lost as we get older. Not so much as slow wave sleep though. Okay, but sleep is important for memories. It's also important for regulation of our emotions. And last thing that I wanted to mention in relation to Alzheimer's is that sleep is also important for the clearance of one of the molecules that builds in the brain, which is amyloid beta. So here we're seeing, these are experiments that were done in humans in which they did sampling of their spinal fluid every hour. This is on the left is an experiment that was done in mice. What this is showing is the levels of the protein that builds into amyloid plaques, the one that I mentioned at the very beginning. And it has what we call in sleep medicine a circadian rhythm. So it goes up during the day and it goes down during sleep. And this is on mice, but the same thing happens in humans. So while we are active, we release amyloid beta. While we are asleep, we decrease amyloid beta. And same thing here. Well, this is a very complicated experiment, but in short, they injected amyloid beta into mice, and they saw that when the mice are sleeping, they're able to clear amyloid beta. So the third function of sleep, so we said that it's memory one, regulation of emotions. The third thing that sleep does that is good for us is it helps us clean amyloid, it helps us clean tau, and if we don't sleep well, these proteins will start to aggregate. So sleep is a stage that is actually helping our brains to recover. Okay, and two more slides, and then I will move to questions. So the other one is healthy diet. So how does healthy diet work? We know very little about healthy diet. The problem of doing studies on nutrition is that it's very hard to study because people have complicated lives. So people that follow a Mediterranean diet also exercise. Many are also highly educated. So it's very hard to do studies in which you actually are able to separate healthy food from healthy aging and habits. So they're complicated studies. But what we know, the little we know, is that saturated fats increase inflammation. And we know that unsaturated fats, turmeric, polyphenols are anti-inflammatory, okay? So we believe that one of the reasons why Mediterranean diet, for those of you that don't know, it's the most of the calories come from fruits and vegetables. The protein is less, but is mostly comes from fish and poultry, and not so much from red meat. And the oil that they use to cook is olive oil, which is unsaturated. So Mediterranean diet has shown to have anti-inflammatory properties. Okay, this is important because I didn't mention this, but the third thing that happens when you have Alzheimer's is you have amyloid, you have tau, but you also have inflammation. Okay, so healthy diet, especially Mediterranean diet, helps you keep a little bit a lower inflammatory state, and this should be able to help you with your cognition and prevent Alzheimer's. There are other things like fiber, low glycemic carbohydrates, resveratrol. All these things actually help you with your glucose, and we know that diabetes is a risk factor for Alzheimer's, so treating your diabetes and keeping your glucose checked is also something that will help your cognition. And the last thing is, this is something that is quite new, is the effects of the microbiome. Okay, so we're all talking now about the bacteria that live in your guts. The microbiome is very affected by diet. So having a healthy diet will help you have a healthier microbiome. This is just 2 slides to show the connection between inflammation and Alzheimer's. So there is a pro-inflammatory cytokine. I didn't mention this, but one of the things that happens as you get older, unfortunately, is that there is a pro-inflammatory state. So there is more inflammation in your body. And this is also something that actually helps the buildup of these proteins. So having an anti-inflammatory state will help with tissue repair and angiogenesis, and this is something that you can do through diet. And just another slide about the microbiome. We don't understand very well how this works, but there's now quite a bit of evidence that shows that the bacteria in your gut actually have beneficial effects on the brain. They reduce neuroinflammation. They also increase BDNF, which I mentioned before. So having a healthy gut with healthy bacteria is actually shown that it increases your cognition. Okay, and the last slide before we go to the final slide is to talk about education. And why is education so important and being active? These studies come from the NAN studies. These were studies that were done in the US with a group of women that were living in nunneries. And the good thing about these studies that were done on nuns is that nuns live in the same environment. So they usually enter the nunnery when they're in their 18 or 19 years of age, and they live a very similar very similar lifestyle. They eat the same food. They're in the same cloister, so they have very exposure to the same environment. The only thing that differed in these studies of nuns is the education that they brought when they entered the nunnery. Okay, and we can measure their education. They have to, in these nunneries in the US, they had to write an essay about their lifestyle and about their life before entering the nunnery, and they have to take some exams. Those exams and those essays will tell you something about their pre-morbid education. Okay, and what they saw is that nuns that had higher education, okay, so this is with the high reserve subjects, these nuns needed much more amyloid and much more tau to have the same symptoms. So if you build up cognitive reserve, if you build up based on your education and the life that you had and being active with your brain, you're building up a big shield against pathology, okay? Eventually, the nuns that had the high reserve also developed Alzheimer's, but they developed Alzheimer's much later in life. So they were protected for a number of years. And it's only with the pathology became too much, then they dropped and they also suffer from the symptoms. So these studies on nuns are telling us that we have the capacity to build a good armor against Alzheimer's pathology, and this armor is the education and the life that we live in terms of having our brains being very active. Okay? So, how do we nourish a healthy brain? So, by education, by doing cognitive activities, by exercise. I told you the latest evidence on exercise and how it works, okay? I didn't mention social activities, but being engaged, being with other people. I know that now it's hard with COVID-19. Those are also protective. Healthy diet, and it's not here, but having good sleep habits is also very good. And if you have a sleep disturbance, treating sleep and improving your sleep quality will also help. And then the things that are bad for your brain on the left are bad diets, being depressed, feeling lonely, being socially isolated, bad sleep. So all these things are things that we know that unfortunately increase your risk and make you more vulnerable.